You have 5 minutes to clear your desk." Those were the exact words my father-in-law, Richard Vance, said to me in front of the entire executive board of Apex Tech. His voice was cold, flat, and completely devoid of any family warmth. I stood at the end of the long glass table, still holding the presentation clicker I had used for the last 8 years to guide this company through every technical audit, every database migration, and every major scale-up. I was 48 years old, and I was being thrown out like a common thief by the man whose daughter I had been married to for 12 years. I did not yell. I did not make a scene. I just looked at the faces around the table. My wife, Jenna, was not there. She had conveniently scheduled a client meeting in Chicago that morning. But her mother, Diane, sat in the corner, looking at her nails, and Rachel Taylor, the newly appointed vice president of operations, and Jenna's best friend, was sitting next to Richard, a smug little smile playing on her lips. She had been waiting for this day. "Sure thing," I said. I laid the clicker on the table, turned around, and walked out. I walked down the hall to my department, the infrastructure and DevOps wing on the second floor. I had built this team from the ground up, starting 8 years ago with just 3 junior engineers and a stack of legacy servers. Now, we were 19 senior specialists, managing a multi-million-dollar private cloud network that supported over 50 enterprise clients. Before we start, let me explain how my day had gone and how I ended up packing my life into a cardboard box. Security guards stood at the entrance of my department. They looked uncomfortable. I knew both of them, Bob and Ted. I had bought them coffee and donuts during our weekend maintenance shifts. Now they stood there as chaperones while I pulled a cardboard box from under my desk and began packing. My hands were steady. I grabbed my family photos, my personal notebooks, and the backup hard drive I kept taped under my desk drawer. That drive contained my proprietary disaster recovery scripts and system configs, code I had written on my own time before I even joined the company. If Richard wanted me gone, he was not keeping my brain for free. Then, I heard the rustle of chairs. I looked up. One by one, Brandon, Maya, Justin, and all 19 members of my team stood up. They did not say a word. They just grabbed their bags, their personal laptops, and their boxes. They walked out of the rows of desks and stood behind me. The silence on the floor was deafening. Even the security guards backed off. We walked to the elevator together, 20 of us, leaving the entire IT department completely empty. To understand how a 48-year-old chief technology officer gets discarded by his own family, you have to look back 3 weeks. It started at the Vance family lake house in Lake Gaston. I had spent 14 hours smoking brisket and ribs for the family gathering, hauling my own smoker up from Raleigh. I stood by the grill, sweat dripping down my neck, while the rest of the family sat on the covered deck, sipping expensive Chardonnay. Richard raised his glass to the crowd. "Another record quarter for Apex Tech," he announced, his face red from the wine. "Revenue is up 22% compared to last year." Everyone cheered. Jenna was sitting next to Rachel Taylor, both of them laughing. Diane, my mother-in-law, walked past the grill and looked at my grease-stained t-shirt. "You look exhausted, Stephen," she said, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "You really should take better care of your appearance. Jenna is moving up fast in the industry, and it does not look good when her husband looks like a mechanic." I forced a smile. "I have been running server migrations until 3 a.m. for the past 5 days, Diane," I replied. She just waved her hand and walked away. Later that evening, Richard walked down to the dock where I was cleaning the grill tools. "You have been running hard for 8 years, Stephen," he said, leaning against the wooden railing. "Maybe it is time to think about a transition. The tech landscape is changing, and we need fresh energy. Rachel has some great ideas about streamlining operations." "Rachel?" I asked, turning to face him. "She has been with the company for 18 months, Rachel. She is a project manager, not an infrastructure specialist. She does not know the difference between a load balancer and a database index." Richard chuckled, patting my shoulder. "She has leadership qualities, Stephen. She understands the big picture. You are great at the execution, but we need someone who can lead us into the next phase. Think about your legacy." His words felt like a cold draft on a warm night. Legacy was corporate speak for replacement. I had built the entire architecture that kept Apex Tech alive. When ransomware hit our servers 2 years ago, I spent 48 hours straight in the server room. saving $3,000, zero zone in client data while Richard was golfing in Pinehurst. Nobody praised my leadership then. They just expected the system to work. That night, as we packed our bags to drive back to Raleigh, Jenna was brushing her hair in the guest room. She looked at me through the mirror. My dad is right, you know. You look tired, Stephen. Maybe you should let Rachel handle the day-to-day operations. It would give us more time for ourselves. I stopped packing my clothes. Rachel has been asking me for admin-level access to our production environments, I said. She wants the security keys to our core database backups. Why does a VP of operations need root access? Jenna shrugged, not looking at me. She is trying to understand the workflow. Don't be so paranoid, Stephen. We are all on the same team. But we were not. Rachel had been shadowing me for 2 months, asking detailed questions about our redundancy plans, recovery protocols, and vendor contracts. I thought I was mentoring a colleague. In reality, she was mapping my kingdom, preparing to take the keys while her best friend and my father-in-law helped her do it. The confirmation of my suspicions came on a Thursday afternoon in the form of a misdirected email. Rachel was supposed to blind copy me, but in her haste, she added me to the CC line instead. The subject was Client Transition Update. It was addressed to Richard. I have taken active charge of the Reynolds database transition, Rachel wrote. We are streamlining the data pipelines ahead of schedule. Stephen appears to be overwhelmed with the legacy components, so I stepped in to ensure we do not lose momentum. I stared at the screen, my coffee cooling on the desk. The Reynolds database transition was my project. I had designed the entire schema, managed the API integrations, and spent 3 weekends testing the replication cycles. Rachel had not attended a single technical review. She had been at a corporate wine retreat in California during the kickoff week. Now she was writing to the CEO, claiming she was rescuing a failing project from an overwhelmed 48-year-old manager. I did not reply to the email. I did not storm into her office. I forwarded the message to my personal email account, downloaded the attachment, and saved it to my private drive. Then I went back to writing database migration scripts. That evening, I tried to talk to Jenna at our home in Raleigh. She was sitting at the kitchen island, typing on her phone. Jenna, did you know Rachel is telling your dad that she is running the Reynolds project? I asked, setting my keys down. Jenna did not look up. She probably just meant she is coordinating the operational side, Stephen. You tend to get bogged down in the technical details. She sent a document to your dad saying I was overwhelmed and that she had to step in, I said, walking closer. She is taking credit for my work to build a case for herself. Jenna sighed, finally putting her phone down. She looked irritated. Why does everything have to be a conspiracy with you? Rachel is my friend and my dad is the CEO. They are trying to grow the company. If they are shifting responsibilities, maybe you should cooperate instead of fighting it. I looked at my wife, the woman I had supported through her business school degrees, the woman whose family I had helped build. She was not even trying to hear my side. She had already aligned herself with the corporate narrative. 2 days later, the real test came. It was Saturday night, 9:06 p.m. I was at home, trying to read a book while Jenna watched a movie in the next room. My phone buzzed. It was Brandon, my lead system engineer. Stephen, we have a major issue, Brandon said, his voice tense. The East Coast database sync just failed. It triggered a cascading overwrite on the active servers. The backup directories are corrupting. I was out of the house in 3 minutes. When I arrived at the office, the server room was humming like a jet engine. Brandon was already there, still wearing a party hat from his daughter's 5th birthday. Maya had arrived in a cocktail dress. She had walked out in the middle of an anniversary dinner. Justin was dumping energy drinks and bags of chips onto the desk. Rachel Taylor sent a text message to the group chat. I am monitoring the database status from home. Let me know if you need me to escalate to the executive board. Monitoring from home meant she was looking at a dashboard she did not understand, waiting for us to do the work. We spent the next 27 hours straight in that server room. There were no breaks, no sleep, and no room for errors. If we lost the enterprise database history, Apex Tech would face compliance audits, federal penalties, and lawsuits from our top 5 clients. I sat at the main terminal, writing script fragments to recover data blocks from shadow volume copies, while Maya rebuilt the database index tables by hand. Brandon managed the network traffic to prevent further data loss, and Justin manually verified the transactional logs. By Sunday afternoon, we had recovered 60% of the files. By Monday morning, 1:47 a.m., we reached 100% recovery. We had saved the company from a catastrophic system failure that would have cost millions. I wrote the recovery report, detailing every script used, every server patched, and every engineer who worked the shift. I listed Brandon, Maya, and Justin at the top. I signed it and sent it to Richard and Rachel. At 9:06 a.m. on Monday, a company-wide email went out from the CEO's office. Apex Tech has successfully resolved a critical server issue thanks to the swift leadership and strategic oversight of Rachel Taylor, the email read. We are proud of her initiative in keeping our infrastructure secure. My name was not on the email. Brandon, Maya, and Justin were not mentioned. We were ghosts who had worked 27 hours straight to clean up a mess while Rachel slept in her bed. I walked into Richard's office. He was sipping coffee, looking out the window. Richard, I said, closing the door. My team worked 27 hours straight to recover those databases. Rachel was not even in the building. Richard did not turn around. Stephen, leadership is about delegation and accountability. Rachel kept the board informed throughout the weekend. She managed the crisis. Your team did their job, and we appreciate it. But we need to focus on the future. Rachel's leadership is paying off. I looked at him, and the picture became clear. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a planned execution. They were building a paper trail of Rachel's success and my obsolescence. They wanted to make me look like an old, struggling manager who had to be rescued by a dynamic young executive. I walked back to my office, locked the door, and sat down. I reached under my desk, feeling the black duct tape that held my personal backup hard drive. I pulled it down. It contained the core operating scripts, the cloud network blueprints, and the proprietary automation tools I had developed over 8 years. I plugged it into my laptop and began updating the encryption keys. I made 3 duplicate copies. I put one in my bank safety deposit box, mailed one to my brother in Denver, and kept one in my briefcase. If they wanted to steal my job, they would have to run the system without my brain. And I was going to make sure they did not have the password. The final confrontation occurred 4 days later during the quarterly operations review. I arrived at the office at 6:45 a.m. to set up my presentation slides, but when I pushed open the conference room door, Rachel was already there. She was sitting in my chair at the head of the table, her laptop open, drinking coffee. "What are you doing?" I asked, stopping at the threshold. Rachel did not look up from her screen. "Richard asked me to run the presentation today, Stephen. It is just a temporary operational adjustment." I walked behind her and looked at the screen. She was presenting my slides, but she had deleted my name from the title page and replaced it with her own. Even worse, she was accessing file directories that she had no business viewing, confidential budget projections, and proprietary software architecture plans. She was logged in using credentials that had been assigned to my security clearance. One by one, the board members entered. None of them looked me in the eye. They sat down, opened their folders, and stared at their pads. Diane Vance walked in last. She took a seat at the far end of the room, glanced at me with a cold smirk, and immediately began typing a text message. I saw the screen of her phone flash. She was texting Jenna. "It is starting." At 7:05 a.m. sharp, the double doors swung open and Richard Vance marched in. He did not sit down. He walked directly to the head of the table, slammed his palm flat against the wood, and looked at me. "Stephen, you have 5 minutes to clear your desk," Richard said. His voice was loud enough to carry through the glass walls. "Security is waiting outside." The room went dead silent. Rachel shifted in her seat, suddenly looking very interested in her coffee. I did not argue. I did not ask for a reason. I knew the contract and I knew my rights, but I also knew when a fight was already lost. I set the presentation clicker on the glass table, turned on my heel, and walked out. Security was waiting. Bob and Ted looked at the floor as I approached my desk. I pulled a cardboard box from my drawer, placed my personal items inside, and reached under my desk to peel off the primary backup drive. Then I heard the footsteps. Brandon stood up first, packing his laptop. Maya followed, then Justin. One by one, all 19 members of my department stood up, packed their bags, and joined me in the hallway. We walked past the conference room where Richard and Rachel were watching through the glass. Rachel looked pale, realizing that the entire operational brain of the company was walking out the door. When I walked into my house in Raleigh, Jenna was sitting on the sofa, her laptop open. She looked up, her expression a mix of anger and embarrassment. "My dad called," Jenna said, setting her laptop aside. "He said you had an episode. He said you disrupted the quarterly review, made a scene, and that you are refusing to cooperate with the transition." I dropped the cardboard box on the floor. "Did he also mention that my entire department of 19 people resigned on the spot and walked out with me?" I asked. Jenna stared at the box. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, opened the email Rachel had CC'd me on, and showed it to her. I also showed her the system logs, showing Rachel using stolen admin credentials to access my private files. "Your best friend and your father planned this, Jenna," I said. "They wanted my architecture, but they wanted me gone so they could hand my salary and my title to Rachel." Jenna looked at the screen, her mouth opening slightly, but she quickly recovered her composure. "My dad is running a business, Stephen. He has to make tough choices. You should have talked to me instead of causing a public scandal. 19 people walking out is going to ruin our reputation." "Our reputation?" I asked, laughing. "You mean your reputation at the country club? You did not care about my career when they were planning to bury me. You only care now because it looks messy." "I need some space to think," Jenna said, turning away. I grabbed my briefcase. "Take all the time you need," I said. "I am sleeping in the garage apartment." Over the next 24 hours, my phone did not stop buzzing. Justin sent me a screenshot of the internal Slack channels. The resignation announcement had triggered a wave of panic. 2 managers in HR and 3 client success managers had also submitted their notices in solidarity. By Tuesday afternoon, my personal inbox had 12 emails from our major clients. They all said the same thing. They had heard about my departure and wanted to know where I was going. On Wednesday morning, I received a call from the director of IT at Reynolds, one of our top 5 accounts. "Stephen, we have been working with you for 6 years," he said. "We do not trust Apex Tech without you. If you are starting a new venture, we want in. We are ready to move our data systems to your new platform." A few hours later, an email arrived from Nolan Davis, a senior partner at Pinnacle Ventures. I had met him 1 year ago when Richard was trying to raise capital, but Pinnacle had declined to invest in Apex Tech. "Stephen, I have been following the news of the mass walkout," Nolan wrote. "A team that loyal does not leave for no reason. It tells me you are the core value of that company. Let us talk. We are interested in funding your next project." I sat in my garage apartment, looking at the email. The family who was supposed to support me had thrown me out like garbage. The industry partners I had served for 8 years were ready to back me with millions. I picked up my phone and called Nolan Davis. "Let us set up a meeting for tomorrow morning," I said. "I have the team, I have the architecture, and I have a database to build." Within 7 days of the boardroom execution, my garage was transformed into the nerve center of a new tech firm. We set up 4 folding tables, ran extension cords from the kitchen, and hung a dry erase board on the wall. It was dusty and smelled like motor oil, but it was ours. We called the company Ironclad Systems. Brandon, Maya, and Justin were there on the first morning. They did not even ask about salaries or benefits. They just showed up with their laptops, bags of bagels, and thermoses of coffee. Chloe, our designer, registered the domain and built our temporary website in 4 hours. By the end of the week, we had 3 legacy clients sign service contracts with us. They did not care about the corporate offices or the sleek glass walls of Apex Tech. They cared that the engineers who kept their databases online were sitting in my garage. Nolan Davis from Pinnacle Ventures did not hesitate. After reviewing our architecture plans and verifying that our entire core team was intact, he wired $2,400,000 in seed capital to our business account. "You have 7 months of runway," Nolan told me over the phone. "Build the platform. I want to see Apex Tech eat their words." While we were building, Apex Tech was beginning to fracture. Richard Vance attempted to spin the mass walkout on LinkedIn as a strategic restructuring, posting a photo of himself shaking hands with a new junior intern. The post received only 4 likes and a spam comment. The industry was not buying it. The real disaster struck on a Thursday night. Rachel Taylor, eager to prove she could handle the infrastructure, decided to run a database consolidation script on the servers hosting our largest financial client. It was the same client I had spent 2 years onboarding. Rachel had no training in database administration, but she had access to a shared developer account with admin privileges. She bypassed the automated validation checks and executed the script. It was a complete disaster. The script triggered a metadata loop, overwriting the transactional history for the last 6 years. Because I had wiped the local backup directories from my office computer before leaving, the active database could not find the recovery keys. In a panic, Rachel tried to force a rollback, but she only succeeded in corrupting the shadow copies. The databases went completely black. I received a text message from a senior support specialist who had remained at Apex Tech. Rachel just wiped the database. Richard is screaming, they have no backups. It is a total loss. I did not reply. I had warned them that Rachel did not have the qualifications, but they had chosen politics over competence. The next morning, Eleanor, the former director of legal affairs at Apex Tech, walked into my garage. She was carrying a leather briefcase and a high-end coffee tray. She sat down on a folding chair and placed a blue flash drive on my table. "I resigned this morning," Eleanor said, her voice calm and professional. "I am not going down with a sinking ship, and I brought some insurance." "What is this?" I asked, pointing at the drive. Eleanor leaned forward. "When you were terminated, Richard wanted to claim ownership of your personal disaster recovery scripts. He and Rachel knew you had written them before joining Apex Tech, and that they did not own the copyright. So, they forged your signature on an intellectual property release agreement." I stared at her. "They forged my signature?" "Yes," Eleanor said. "Rachel had an old document you signed, and she used a digital editing tool to copy your signature onto the IP release form. They filed it in the company database. That is a direct violation of state law, specifically California Penal Code Section 470, which is the jurisdiction where Apex Tech is incorporated. Because of the forgery, the agreement is void ab initio, meaning it has no legal effect." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. "That is not all," Eleanor continued. "Since they have no legal right to your script, every day they run your code on their active servers to keep their remaining databases alive. They are committing federal copyright infringement under 17 U.S.C., paragraph 106. In addition, I have documented proof that Richard used company assets to pay off his personal credit cards and fund Rachel's lavish corporate travel. That is a clear breach of fiduciary duty to the shareholders. And their sudden termination of your 19 team members without the required 60 days of notice is a direct violation of the Federal Warning Act under 29 U.S.C., paragraph 2101. Eleanor looked around the garage, then looked back at me. "You need a chief legal officer, Stephen. I know their contracts, I know their clients, and I know exactly where the bodies are buried. Let me handle them." I smiled, reaching out to shake her hand. "Welcome to Ironclad, Eleanor," I said. "Let us burn it down." The following Monday, Jenna drove up to my garage in her black Lexus. She walked in holding a manila envelope in one hand and a bottle of expensive red wine in the other. She looked around at the folding tables, the whiteboards covered in system diagrams, and the team members typing furiously. "Stephen, we need to talk," Jenna said, her voice strained. I gestured to the team. They picked up their laptops and stepped out into the driveway. Leaving us alone in the garage, she set the wine on a workbench and handed me the envelope. "My dad wants to settle. This is a release agreement. They are offering $900,000 if you sign a non-disclosure agreement and agree not to sue." I did not open the envelope. $900,000 to keep quiet about forgery and copyright theft? I asked. "Stephen, please," Jenna whispered, her eyes red. "The company is falling apart. Investors are pulling out, and our biggest clients are leaving. My dad has not slept in days. Rachel is gone. She was fired yesterday. If you press charges, Apex Tech will go bankrupt." I looked at my wife. "Did you know Rachel forged my signature on that IP release?" I asked. Jenna looked down, crossing her arms. "I knew they were looking for a way to secure the code base, Stephen. I did not know they would actually forge your signature. I just thought you would handle it. You always find a way to fix things. You knew they were trying to steal my work, and you said nothing, I said, my voice flat. You chose your family's status over your husband's dignity. I was trying to protect our future, she cried. This is our future, I replied, gesturing to the garage. I am building a company with people who do not stab me in the back. Tell your dad to talk to Eleanor. We are not settling. Jenna stared at me, realizing there was no room for negotiation. She picked up the manila envelope, left the bottle of wine on the workbench, and walked out. 2 days later, Eleanor filed the formal complaint in federal court. The lawsuit detailed the Warren Act violations, the forgery under California Penal Code Section 470, the copyright infringement under 17 U.S.C. Paragraph 106, and Richard Vance's breach of fiduciary duty. Eleanor also scheduled a press conference at our new corporate office space, a small 3-room suite we rented with our seed capital. We stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the local news cameras. 23 engineers and operations managers. We did not use corporate jargon. We just explained how we had built the infrastructure, how we had been discarded, and how we had rebuilt it. The story went viral. The tech journals ran headlines about the Apex Tech exodus, and the Reddit community spread the legal filing across every major tech forum. The fallout was immediate. Within 2 weeks, Richard Vance stepped down as CEO of Apex Tech, citing health concerns. The board of directors initiated a fire sale of the company's assets to cover the losses from Rachel Taylor's database disaster. Rachel herself deleted her social media accounts and disappeared from the Raleigh tech scene entirely. Meanwhile, Ironclad Systems took off. Reynolds signed a massive $12 million contract over 3 years to migrate their entire database network to our secure cloud system. 5 other enterprise clients followed them. 6 months after walking out of Apex Tech with a cardboard box, Ironclad Systems was valued at $60,000. We had 47 full-time employees, offices in Raleigh, and plans to expand to Phoenix and Denver. Jenna filed for divorce shortly after the press conference. During the division of assets, my lawyer uncovered that she had tried to transfer $450 Suzanne from our joint accounts to Apex Tech in a desperate bid to keep her father's company afloat. Under the legal doctrine of dissipation of assets, the court ordered her to repay the full amount to me, leaving her with a fraction of the marital estate. One evening, as I sat at my new desk in our Raleigh headquarters, my phone pinged. It was an email from Rachel Taylor to my personal account. The subject line was recommendation request. Stephen, I know I made mistakes, Rachel wrote. I was under immense pressure from Richard, and I made poor decisions. I am trying to get a job at a mid-sized firm in Charlotte, and they are asking for references. If you could just write a single sentence saying I have operational experience, it would save my career. I do not expect you to forgive me, but please do not destroy my life. I read the email twice. I did not feel angry. I did not feel a need for revenge. I just felt nothing. I clicked the delete button. I looked through the glass window of my office. Out on the floor, Brandon was laughing with a junior dev. Maya was reviewing a system architecture map, and Justin was setting up a new database rack. These were the people who had walked out with me, the ones who had worked 27 hours in a hot server room because they believed in the work and they believed in each other. It took Richard Vance exactly 5 minutes to fire me and try to erase my life's work. It took me 6 months to prove that you cannot steal the foundation and expect the house to stand. We built this from nothing, and this time, we did it right.